you still need that brand to believe in. You can't just be flogging the same stuff as everybody else.
Yeah, you run out of road at some point, right?
Yep.
It works for a while. Hi, welcome to Sell the Story. I'm your host, Ben Watson, along with my co-host, Clint Armstrong. And today we have a guest all the way from Europe via South Africa, Templar, Wales. Templar, nice to have you on. Do you want to give us an intro and, what you're doing these days?
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Great to be here. Focusing mostly on two things. I've had a career that has always been within digital design or digital marketing, and then branding being at the center of that. So, and at the moment, lucky enough to be able to focus on two key things that are interlocked. One being e-commerce from a content development, advertising point of view. And then the other is brand development, so brand strategy, brand design, so consulting with brands to help them either brand new brands, just pitched on something recently that hopefully we can get, or existing brands that after 20 years realize that they perhaps don't fit exactly the audience that's consuming it now. So just helping people to kind of position or reposition themselves, and that great intersection, the Venn diagram of where those two things meet and where they should meet. Not everybody believes that they should meet. I think it's in that phase where I feel like it's like the early internet and Web3 and various things where there's a lot of e-commerce that just ignores brand. And I strongly believe, I think like you guys do, that you still need that brand to believe in. You can't just be flogging the same stuff as everybody else.
Yeah,
So,
you run out of road at some point, right?
Yep.
It works for a while. But well, welcome on. Sell the Story is all about telling stories around brand for e-commerce clients. So this is a perfect fit. And before we get going, what coffee are you drinking today?
Bearing in mind it's 3 p.m. here.
Right.
So when you talk about a long coffee,
Wow.
There's one of the original Stanleys.
Yeah,
before it
classic.
became popular.
Yeah. Not the trendy cup, but
no, I love it.
I make it in a mocha pot. So I make a espresso and then I essentially add water. So it's an Americano, but a liter of Americano. So I'm down to the last half a cup.
Good for you. That's that is mocha pot, Stanley, super old school. I love it.
Handmade mug. This is my.
Where's that from?
That's really fantastic.
Yeah.
Wait, did you make that? Is that what your name is at the bottom of it?
I painted it. Yeah, I didn't make the mug, but I painted it in Copenhagen.
Look at you. So creative.
That's my bicycle. That's my bicycle in Copenhagen.
Another life.
I have zero artistic talent. Yep. I have zero artistic talent. So seeing somebody who can actually put a design that you could tell what it was.
Right. Yeah.
Impressed.
Clint, dare I ask, what are you drinking today?
I just can't see it. Same old. This is actually a pot from today, Ben, but tomorrow will be more than 24 hours. But Mr. Coffee drip.
I never actually asked, what beans do you use?
I don't even. The look of scorn that I'm going to get from you from this right now is just going to be double. So I don't know if I'm ready for that yet this morning.
Okay. All right. I've got
Starbucks beans.
Jesus. I've got my espresso, another handmade cup as well. I did not make this. This is an English pottery guy. Just a little Pikachu face. I kind of you picked up on camera, but it's come through. Anyway, yes, quite nice. Nice espresso. Good local roastery. Very good stuff. Colombian today. It's great. Templar, look, what we do is we try to be ambitious with our clients, and with this podcast, 9 Bar Commerce, the idea is to help e-comm clients create differentiated brands, right? It's a high bar, it's not easy. Look, straight out of the gate, what would be your number one piece of advice to e-comm businesses who they've got a product, it seems like it's got some traction? What would you tell them they should be doing?
So existing brands that they've already got products in market. I think the important thing, if they haven't, and this is the beginning of everything, is really sort of an audit or just a litmus test of where are people. Because some people have done it properly, other people have done it properly by mistake or just by nature. You get entrepreneurs that really they just have the passion and the knack, and they get it right. And then other people just they don't care about it, they're not aware of it, they think it's all about the product. And I've had a lot of these fights in my life, product and price, and that's all that matters. And if you just want to sell that product, then that's fine, But if you want to sell other products or you want to carry on selling this product, then you obviously have to build the brand. So my advice, if I can have two pieces of advice, the one is to say, that people have to be aware of the fact that usually 9 times out of 10, you are not the audience. Right? Don't assume that your way of thinking, your relationship with that product is the same as other people's relationship. If you take Spanx, for example, products like that, where people are solving a problem for themselves and there's a big enough audience that has the same problem as them, perfect. But for a lot of people, they're trying to start a business. They have a business approach. They're selling something that they think will sell. And they make the mistake of assuming that their thoughts are right. So that's the one. And then the other thing is the importance of it, that it isn't just the product, because you need to build trust in a world where there are so many versions of every single product. There's one slightly cheaper, one slightly more expensive, bigger one with more features. So people need to be able to recognize yours that stands out and build that trust. And so without punting marketing, punting branding, it really has a tangible value, getting people to be able to recognize and trust and buy the next thing that you offer them.
Yeah. I think the trust side of it is something that I think everybody realizes, but doesn't necessarily think about or communicate about, because that's what it is. Essentially, you're creating a relationship with your consumer. And if they trust you and they feel like they're aligned, or that they're aligned with what you're saying, and you're aligned with the values that they have, then that trust is easily formed. And you said this word earlier, it's that litmus test of, have you made it? But yeah, I would love to kind of hear your take on that as well. I think that it's along with trust, but it's also along with how people communicate about you, if they're actually going to talk about you while you're not there, if they're going to make the recommendation, that type of thing.
You buy something, and especially something like a BMW, which it's not a Lamborghini, but it's a decent price if you're buying the latest model, and you find yourself having to defend your decision to your wife, your family, your friends. Then the words that come out of their mouth, are they saying what you've communicated? Are they buying it because they bought into what you told them? And that, to me, is also the difference between, is marketing evil or is marketing good? And if the brand that you're promising people is the experience that they get when they spend their money, then you've done them a favor of living up to their expectations. Like, that's what I wanted and that's what I got, versus flogging them something they don't really want and they're disappointed afterwards. So, if the promise and the product match, then I believe you've done that person a good deed.
Yeah, 100%. Are there those moments that you're aware of, or that you work with your clients on to try and help them really cultivate that relationship with their customer?
One of the tools is experience principles. So however you experience a brand, whether you see a logo, whether you watch a video, a piece of content, or you speaking to a human being, or you can invite to an event, it's an experience of some sort. And the same way you have a personality, and when you show up to work and you go out to a formal dinner, or you hang out with your kids in a movie, you have the same character, you have the same values. You wouldn't do something that you don't believe in, but you'll dress differently. And, so the same with the brand. It needs to be adaptable, but it needs to have all fundamental values. So those principles, and those principles must be based on real values, what the company is prepared to stand up for. And then you can extrapolate that into everything, into your copywriting, into your design. And I believe that should happen before you design your logo, and preferably even before you name the company, so that it can be relevant. But generally it's very seldom that you get to do that. But yeah, if you get these experience principles right, then those other decisions become much easier. Just like if you have strong values of your own, all your other decisions become easy, because you know what you believe in. You're not going to be swayed and have to try and make a decision on the fly.
Do you, I guess within kind of the clients you work with, do you have a process for like either auditing that they have that already set in place, or kind of working with them to develop those principles as part of the, whether it's a rebranding? You mentioned you worked with clients that have had similar branding and brand for the past 20 plus years. Like, do you have a process for working through that with them?
I do, and there are a lot of tools in the toolbox, and it's really about an interview with the founders, an interview with the owners, and the people who really are closest to owning that brand and making the decisions, and then planning that process. It's very similar. Depends on the time, the budget, and really what the job is that has to be tackled. But yeah, I have basic process that we follow. I do have an audit. It's more of a marketing maturity audit. So it includes brand in it, but and that comes through from, do you have a strategy? Does everybody understand that strategy? Do you measure the outputs against that strategy? And again, it's an interview with people across the business, mostly in marketing, to see, does everybody have the same understanding that the CMO and the CEO think they have? And then that just tells you what your marketing maturity level is and where the gaps are. So you can do a similar thing with the brand as well, as to kind of measure, what should the brand be doing? How should it be performing? Do you even know what your brand should be doing? And then does everybody else understand that? Or does it just sit in the CMO's mind? And he walks around ranting. And I worked with, one of the most passionate CMOs for a few years, and very, very loud, very passionate, and he grew that brand from almost nothing. When he left, there was this gaping hole. But he was a bit of a Steve Jobs, I guess, in a way, not from a product point of view, but from a brand point of view. Nobody was more of an evangelist than him, So, but very often, a lot of the other people were guessing, second guessing what he would want, what he would approve, as opposed to everybody fully grasping it and owning it. You want everybody to own that, to become part of it.
Templar, it's a really good point, because I think, the virtual shelf is something we talk about, and how do you represent yourself? Does it match what the stories you say internally? And, have you found companies that have been successful at taking the CMO's vision and making it the pull through, right, to the rest of the company? Have there been any sort of traits or similarities across those businesses?
Generally, I would say the larger the organization, generally, the better. I mean, you definitely have, I won't name names. We have definitely had large organizations that have succeeded despite it having, it would prove the case wrong. They've succeeded almost purely by product, and longevity. In general, it's like a formal structure and a formal process, and enough of a budget to build that strategy and, socialize it and educate people into supporting it. And then also making sure that it gets rolled out throughout the business, that it doesn't go from brand into marketing and advertising. It goes into HR, it goes into who you hire, it goes into, how you empower the people that you hire.
Yeah, so much truth there. We talked about tribe, and I think that's important, because just from an overall branding standpoint, any of those kind of large brands that have been around essentially forever, they've had the opportunity to kind of build up that loyalty and build up that just fanaticism from all of their fans and all their customers, those who are their most loyal, which we then call their tribe. But I guess are there other steps that potentially e-com brands could take to try and get to that point of, Ben likes to say the first 1,000, but it could even be the first 100 customers that you can then really start to kind of compound on after that?
Yeah, I think that there are two approaches. The one is the more traditional approach, which is, and the more obvious approach that you kind of jump into, which is, you want to super serve an audience. You want to know that there are people that can get as passionate about your product, your brand as you are, and you want to bring them in, let them know that they're early customers, and they're getting involved in this beautiful new thing, and they feel special. They feel, they're part of your journey, and super serve them so that they become passionate about it. They feel proud. They take ownership of it, and then they will help to spread the word. And the other one is, depending on what the product is, if your product or your brand is relevant, it's going to fit into a community. Right? 10 years ago, people were like, oh, we have to build a community. We have to grow our following. And, you do, but you don't need to start there. Like, you jump onto Reddit. If you can't find Reddit, subreddits about what you're trying to sell, maybe you don't have the right product. So get in there, get involved in the, you could do your research there. You can be part of the conversation. And I mean, the software tools will also just inject your advertising into those conversations as well. But, join conversations. It's very, very natural to jump into existing communities and offer your solution. Either it's a headache pill or it's a vitamin, right? It's like,
yeah. When we talk about, founders and building around what they believe, the brand should be. And quite often, I think some of the brands that succeed are those brands where the founder is the audience. It just, they got lucky because they could just follow whatever their vision is. But it's not always the case. And do you have any recent clients where you've actually been able to help them pivot and reimagine, what their brand should be? And what were some of the barriers getting there? Because that's, I think for our audience,
Yep.
the things that seem easy are easy, and the things that are hard feel like they put them off, right? So it'd be great to hear a story where barrier was identified, went through it, saw the benefit.
One springs to mind, quite an interesting case, and it was one of those cases of the full workshop process. And I won't mention names, but they've been going for 18 years. They naturally had two brands. One was the organization that they started in the beginning, and the other one was a project. And that project kept them so busy that that's all they did was that project became the company. And it was very successful, and it was very niche. And but over the years, the community around that need moved further forward than the founders themselves, had experienced. So it was definitely they started it out of their own need, and they fulfilled that, and they were passionate, and they dedicated 20 years of their life to it, and succeeded. But the next generation, or even the generation after that, didn't have those same challenges and those same struggles. They still needed the solution, but the tonality, the rules, and it's the LGBTQ community. And they were still, just people having the ability to express themselves and to be who they want to be. But the next generation was demanding pronouns, and it's very sad and a bit frustrating when within a community there's such specific terminology and definitions that it actually pulls the community apart instead of pulling them tighter together. And, what came out was that the people that thought they were most liberal and open-minded, the behavior was actually quite conservative because they were rejecting the older generation's kind of inability to adapt. They weren't rejecting them. They weren't denying them. They were just saying, look, it's new to us. We're not used to this. And the some of the younger generation were rejecting them because they wanted things to be very specific, and it's a sensitive topic. But this process helped to kind of shake that loose, open up these discussions that they weren't having. Like I was saying earlier, what do they stand for? What brings them together? What do they believe in? What will they fight for, and what will they not? And the founding organization was all about being open-minded and having conversations, regardless of your point of view. So they had nailed that right in the beginning. They just had never thought about it. They never thought about their logo. They never thought about their branding and their positioning. My brief was, how do we bring these two brands together and develop a new brand? And the strategy turned out to show that it shouldn't be. It should be two organizations, a parent organization and a child organization, one that does fundraising and, argues, fights for policy and change at a governmental and a state and the city level. And the other one, which was this place where you could be expressive and find yourself. And, so it showed very clearly that there had to be two different brands because they were two different experiences, and mixing them together would cause more confusion than there already was.
And so I guess kind of if we think about like what's an example within kind of the e-comm space, you have one audience that's used to kind of what this brand has been doing historically and the types of products. And then kind of they bring out this other one that is wildly successful, but isn't necessarily what their older audience is looking for, but then just kind of creates a new one. So in that case, it's like, okay, we're the same, but we're different. And we need to, in order to have that differentiating message, in order to have and support both of those audiences, we do have to have like an umbrella brand, but then we also have these two specific product brands that are separate.
Nothing I've been involved with, but I don't know if you know the story behind this. They're over 100 years old, and all of a sudden, about 7 years ago, they came out with a plastic cup, and the original audience didn't know what to do with it. Like the outdoor camping, hiking kind of people, why do I want a plastic cup? And they literally couldn't get rid of them. So then they they had stock they were sending back, and then they started selling them to influencers, or giving them to influencers, I guess. And suddenly their revenue went from 70 million to 700 million. I was like, yeah, insane. I'm not sure where it's going to go, because that sort of situation, it's a lot of brands succeed because they never flavor of the month. So there's a risk in being flavor of the month. You can kind of peak, and then they move on to somebody else's plastic cup. So as long as you don't lose your original audience.
Yeah, that's because I think there's, I mean, I have two daughters that are 16, and they were all about the Stanley Cups for about 3 months, and that was it. And now they've moved on, to another. I think Odwalla is now their container of choice. Cool. So I think I'm gonna. Typically, we end these with a question around a funny pitch story, or have really kind of transitioned to also asking about your first job. So literally your first job, like whether it was in high school or after. And I've actually started to like the first job question first. And so the question is, what was your first job? One, and then what did you learn during that first job that you still carry with you and you still use?
Okay, so my first job as a kid, I was kind of, for one Christmas holiday, I was Father Christmas on the telephone. So a 15-year-old being Father Christmas on the phone to other kids in the toy area. But I think more relevant to my career, my first actual job was while I was studying. In the afternoons, I'd like run down the road and work in this print shop. So I did everything from designing logos to stationery, business cards, letterheads, brochures, and things like that. But going from being really creative at college and then running down the road and then working extremely fast to get these things out. But the process was still a bit old school. So there were bromide prints, get all the elements that you needed and print them out on bromide prints. And then you'd wax the back of it. So it went through and it just created a wax layer on the back. And then you'd cut all the elements out, and you would hand, the wax allowed you to move them around before it settled. And because of that cutting, the job title was stripper. So yeah, on my resume,
Nice.
first job, stripper.
Wow.
Because every piece of copy, every logo, everything had to be a strip of paper that you could move around. And then you took a process photograph of that. But what did I learn from it? I learned to work really fast when necessary. I think you make those design decisions really quickly. Understanding what direct communication. Stuff that really always inspires me are revolutionary posters, the Russian Revolution, where they had to design them, print them at night, stick them up the next day. Most of them got torn down, and the communication had to be direct. It had to look at it and see what it is, very often using symbolism, so you didn't have to have too much copy. People saw what they knew what it was, they knew when they had to be where. And I think very few pieces of communication succeed at that level of directness, even in this world where you have only that half a second to stop people.
That's fantastic. So your first job was a stripper, and no, I think that's really great. I don't know that we want to get into that, but it's interesting because I think that the things that you take with you and you learn are just when you're that age, you don't necessarily think, oh, this is going to help me for the rest of my life, but they become foundational. It's like, how can you work fast and how can you make decisions quickly? And I think those are things that sometimes are really hard to learn, and the sooner you learn them, the easier kind of your overall career is going to be.
It's a great note to finish on. Templar, I love what you're building. You always got a ton of experience coming into it. And we didn't really touch upon this, but it's a bit of a borderless sort of agency that you're building as well. So you're tapping into talent regardless of where they are in the world. Give us your sign-off business name, how people can sort of find you. And we'll put your contact details on the socials, obviously. Send us out.
So the first one, the e-commerce business, is called Ecommerce Counsel. You can find it at ecommercecounsel.co.za or on LinkedIn. And then the other one is World First, but you can find me Templar Wales. There's no other one. So if you look for Templar Wales, you'll find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, and I just always I'm surprised that this late in my career, get super excited about building brands, super excited about, because it's new, right? It's always a new industry. I get an opportunity to learn everything about a new business and a new audience, and that just kind of keeps me alive. So yeah, I have still a childish fascination with all of this, and e-commerce as well, because it's like everything I've learned in digital marketing, but now inside of a different ecosystem.
Love it.
Okay. Thanks, Clint. As always, Templar, thanks for coming on.
We appreciate
Wealth
it.
of knowledge.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers, mate.
Thanks for the opportunity. Cheers.
Hi, a quick note before you go. Look, if you enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor and hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this episode, we've got another one for you, particularly if you're an entrepreneur looking to exit in the next 12 to 18 months. We talked to Tal Hollywood of M&A advisory firm Harnbeck M&A. Tal has some really great advice for those entrepreneurs who are looking to exit down here. Thanks. Bye.